Okay, you are listening to the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor here on WPPM 106.5 in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Twitter at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website, www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHM WPPM. Tonight on the program, we'll be joined by harm reductionist Amelia Flores. Lance Haver will discuss the lack of insurance coverage of art therapy. And Denise Clay-Murray will tell us about VP Harris's interview in Philly yesterday. But first, the big news of the day, and I will let Mayor Parker tell you herself.
Good day, Philadelphia, and hello, everyone. As your 100th mayor, I come before you from my City Hall office with a very important announcement. I am proud to share that I have made my decision and an agreement has been reached that will ensure that our Sixers are staying home. Yes, you heard me correctly. My administration has reached an agreement with the Philadelphia 76ers for an arena in Center City, and I will be transmitting the related legislative package to our City Council of Philadelphia for its consideration where it must be approved. Philadelphia, I am proud. This is an historic agreement. It is the best financial deal ever entered into by a Philadelphia mayor for a local sports arena. And I wholeheartedly believe it is the right deal for the people of Philadelphia. Now, I'm going to have a lot more to say in a forthcoming formal presentation. I am also going to be holding town hall meetings across the city of Philadelphia so that the people will have access to the facts that are contained in the agreement and the legislation as it moves through the city council process. But for today, I want to just say a few more things directly to the people of Philadelphia. This agreement represents more than $1.3 billion of private investment in our city. It will mean hundreds of millions of dollars in new tax revenues for our city of Philadelphia and our school district. It will also mean, and this is important, hundreds and hundreds of jobs for Philadelphians. It means an economic opportunity plan, quite frankly, the likes of which have never been seen in our city. And it represents the start of an unprecedented revival of Market Street, Philadelphia's very first commercial quarter, which we know can reign supreme once again, from City Hall to the Delaware River. Now, to the good people of Chinatown, please hear me. I see you. I listened to you. I want your rich and vibrant community and proud history to not just survive, but to thrive. I believe we have the best Chinatown in the nation, and I am committed to working together with you to support it. Everyone, please stay tuned for details about our full presentation that will be forthcoming very soon. Philadelphians, as your mayor, I want you to know that I am proud of and excited about this agreement, and I am doing my best and working as hard as I possibly can to ensure that we truly are one Philly, a united city. Thank you, Philadelphia, and I'll see you soon.
And as you can imagine, people from Chinatown, people who are opposed to the stadium, are not happy about this. We attended a rally outside of City Hall today to see and hear what people are saying from Chinatown. So here is a little bit of a montage of what happened down there today.
tried to go into the meeting with the mayor and were both refused access?
Shame!
You all know that we have been in this fight for over 2 years, and to refuse to allow us into a meeting to discuss the future of our community is beyond disgusting. But it is not surprising. We have been engaged in a 2-year battle where we have done everything in our power to show this city that this arena will harm not only Chinatown, it will harm patients trying to get to Jefferson, it will harm the neighborhood, it will harm Washington Square West, it will harm the students of Philadelphia by giving tax breaks to multi-billionaires once again.
Shame!
And we are here to say no more. No more.
No more!
This has been a series of sham meetings. We have asked the mayor 4 times, on 4 occasions since her election, to come to Chinatown, to meet with the people, to look us in the eye. And she has either refused or ignored every single request.
Shame!
Instead, I mean, I'm an educator. She's like what we would put in the category of bad principal. She keeps calling us to her office with no notice and acting as though we should be grateful that she is letting us talk to her. But these are hand-picked small groups. She does not have the courage or even the moral fortitude to come to our community.
Coward!
The first meeting at the convention center, well, that was actually the second meeting, but that was the first town hall meeting. She dropped flyers in our community with 72 hours notice. She held that meeting in a building that displaced 200 people in our community. And we were supposed to go in there, and we tried. We tried to go in there respectfully to once again say we are trying to be participants in a process. Our people were kept out of rooms while pro-arena people were being let in. We were put into 3 spillover rooms. The vast majority, as you all know, because most of you were probably there, are against the arena. And we're against the arena. She said she would listen to us. And today, well, yesterday, she started calling individual members of the community at noon. Well, she doesn't make her calls, her people. Yes, to come to a meeting last night at 6:30. Last night was Mid-Autumn Festival, one of the most sacred festivals in our tradition. How the hell you want to call a meeting on Mid-Autumn Festival? Like, I cannot contain the levels of disrespect I am feeling right now. And then to say, oh, sorry, didn't know, come tomorrow at 2. Still less than 24 hours notice. And to be turned away, not even like allowed in the door, down here, let alone in the mayor's office. She is a coward.
Yes.
Come and talk to the community. Come. So she has decided she is supporting this arena, but this is far from over. This was never about just one community. And this is never about just one mayor and her political donors. We have to get mad and take action. They have the power, they have the money, but we have the people. This is a blatant example of governmental malpractice, this over to one of our business owners in Chinatown, whose very livelihood for her and her family is being threatened as we speak.
It's hard to speak after that announcement, but I'm gonna try. My name is Debbie. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, Chinatown. I'm very Philadelphian. I went to school at McCall Elementary School and then on to Philadelphia High School for Girls. So I'm all Philadelphian. I grew up in Chinatown and hung out with the Philadelphia Suns playing basketball. My family has owned businesses in Chinatown, one of which was just 2 blocks away from where the proposed arena is being built. My family has been in Chinatown for generations. I'm the 3rd generation that resides in Chinatown. From my grandparents, my parents, myself, and hopefully the next generation. Chinatown has always been a place where I called home. Our small businesses, our small business used to be in the main drag of Chinatown. It was there for over 35 plus years before it was forced out of that location because a franchise business was willing to pay 3 times the rent amount, which is something we can't afford because we're a small business. Luckily, we were able to find a different location, but if the arena is built, more small businesses like us will be priced out and pushed out of our community, and that will harm the people of Chinatown. Another one of our neighboring stores is an important community resource for our seniors. It was the only store left that provided Chinese newspaper and other media outlets in their language. Seniors go there to buy newspaper and to find out what's going on in the language that they can speak and read. That store was also displaced. Our cultural store puts ads up in Chinese for jobs, apartments, nannies, English lessons. It was a public square. People could come in and ask for help to find information where they can go see a doctor, where they can help with immigration papers, car insurance, ask English lesson for the kids. It was just more than a shop. It was a center for resource. Where will these people go if Chinatown is erased? Where will they buy their Lunar New Year decoration? Where will they buy their files, their red envelopes? Where will they find people who help them translate labels in the store? Where can people go to celebrate their culture? If the arena is built, our rents will go up. Our property taxes will go up. Small businesses like ours will not survive. We will be forced out. Chinatown has endured so much: a highway, jail, baseball stadium, casino. We must protect and preserve Chinatown as we ask the mayor and Councilman Squilla to say no to the arena. Find another location.
Yes.
Save Chinatown. Stop the displacement.
Why weren't you allowed in that meeting? What did they say to you?
They said our name was not on the list. I was invited to the last 2 meetings, which I could not make because it was such short notice. Ironically, 3 of us at the meeting that was at the convention center, the place that displaced 200 of our people, 3 of us were in a conference in Seattle for historic preservation of historic Asian American sites that are under threat across the country. So the irony of holding that meeting then, but I was on that invite list. We were not called for this meeting. And then another gentleman who's with me, Wei Chen, both of us were turned away. We were told our names are not on this list. Both of us are among the most outspoken opponents of this arena. I can only assume that since we were on all other invite lists, our exclusion was purposeful. And it goes in keeping with the whole pattern of refusing to come to our community, refusing to talk to us, and refusing to face us and look us in the eye.
So you have a lot of people here on short notice. What is it going to be like when these hearings start and these conversations begin?
Well, we'll see. We turned out 800 people with 72 hours notice. We turned out 4,000 people in the pouring rain with about a month notice. And people don't come out for things they don't care about. This city is angry. This city is angry at seeing a process of corruption played out in real time across their television screens, across their newspapers. It is so obvious that there is a corruption in this process. I think the people will turn out. It will be up to members of council to make decisions on whether or not they represent the people or whether or not they represent their own political interests.
Okay, well, we will be keeping an eye on this. We're going to have all different various stakeholders on the show coming up in the future, and there's a lot more to go on this. Now for our interview with harm reductionist Amelia Flores. We discuss what harm reduction is and Councilmember Ketsi Lozada's legislation severely limiting mobile treatment vehicles in Kensington. So here's our interview with Amelia Flores. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
So before we get into specific questions about what's going on right now, can you tell us a little bit about what harm reduction is?
Yeah, harm reduction, it's many things. It's a approach to public health. It's a philosophy of taking care of people. I think it's best kind of summed up as like meeting people where they're at and trying to minimize the harms associated with, in this case, drug use, but really any risk-taking behavior. It recognizes that people do use drugs for a myriad of reasons, and until we have a perfect society, and even then, people are going to use drugs, and they deserve the tools to do so as safely as possible.
And specifically, what do you do in this line of work, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I mean, I have my own lived experience with drug use and recovery, and I think I was watching a news program one day, and it was about needle exchange, which I'd heard about before, but it was kind of an abstract concept, and it was a program about Prevention Point. And I was watching it, and I was like, that makes sense. And I think a week or two later, I started volunteering there every Friday. Eventually got a job there. Was there for about 3 or 4 years. And I still work in, right now I'm at Penn, working in like addiction medicine research. And I'm part of a collective of volunteers that still go up to Kensington every Sunday and distribute supplies, safe for use supplies, water, socks, stuff like that.
Now, let me ask you the very broad question here. When we talk about the situation in Kensington, what are we really talking about? What is really happening here?
I mean, I think we're talking about like our most vulnerable neighbors being left behind. It's frustrating because, you know, I've only been in Philly since 2017. So I've talked to a lot of people who've been doing this like on the ground work for, you know, much longer than I've been here. And they all say that this problem was created through policy. We had people, you know, we had drug use and we had public drug use, but people were on the Conrail tracks and in El Campamento. And once that cleared out, folks came up to the Ave. And I think we're just seeing like a continuation of those really poor policy decisions that make life worse for both the people using drugs and the people, the homeowners and renters like living in the neighborhood. And I think we're seeing an administration trying to like disappear our population. You know, we can talk about like trying to put every single person into treatment, but the reality is there aren't enough beds. People's wounds are too complex to be accepted to a lot of places. It's ignoring reality. And the thing about harm reduction as a public health movement is it's always had to be backed up by evidence. These are evidence-based practices. And so to oppose it is kind of like to oppose science. And it's, yeah, it's, you know, and I want to make it clear that like I recognize that no one deserves to live among what folks in Kensington are living among. But no one deserves to live on the street either. And we need to put forward solutions that, you know, work for everyone and take everyone into account because they're all people. So it's just a cruel approach to, I think, the Kensington problem.
You know, and one of the things that I've sort of observed and really particularly the last few months, it's not just that people don't feel like they have an answer. They don't know what to do. It almost seems to me like nobody knows even how to get started to figure out what to do.
Mm.
When you talk about beds, city council had to have a hearing to find out how many beds there are and how to utilize them. And there isn't a database anywhere.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, why not? What are we
Yeah.
really trying to do here? So I want to ask you a little bit about who's doing the good work in Kensington right now. Who's really trying to make a difference up there?
I mean, there are a lot of people trying to make a difference. I I think there are many valid criticisms to make of kind of like the bigger nonprofits, namely, Prevention Point or any other like nonprofit industrial complex organization, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is that like when I was there, I could still recognize that like we were doing important work and we were doing so with very, very limited resources. I think places like Pathways to Housing that are recognizing that like housing first, like that approach is needed. Put people in housing, whether or not they're abstaining from use, because the reality is it's really hard to stop using if you're still homeless. Um, I think there are a lot of grassroots organizations like Operation in My Backyard or the Everywhere Project who are just organizing amongst themselves to just bring supplies to people. And I think you also see among the people living on the streets, people do take care of each other. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens out there, but there's also a lot of humanity that you can see when you're out there. And it's people are really trying to make the best of a tough situation with like almost no help. And seeing like Prevention Point, for example, under attack now and losing funding is really disheartening. And I think that like if Prevention Point does cease to exist, it's going to be directly correlated to an increase in HIV and hepatitis and just death. So if that's what the administration wants on their hands and their conscience, then yeah, that's what they're going to get. But there are a lot of people doing good work up there.
And that was the next question I was going to ask you about needle exchange. I've been very confused as to why this isn't going to be funded anymore when it's proven to be beneficial.
Yeah, and the model Prevention Point was using was already not like what the CDC calls best practice, which is needs-based exchange, which is I go into the exchange and I tell you based on what I know about my own use patterns and maybe the folks I'm using around, like how many I need. Prevention Point operated as a one-to-one exchange. They had to because it was more palatable, I think, to politicians, and it helps like the syringe litter, I guess. But it's not best public health practice. Syringe saturation is what we call it, and people know what's best for them. A lot of people who are going to the exchange aren't just picking it for themselves. They're getting it for maybe a house full of people that are using, who are not comfortable going up to Kensington to do that because it can be a rough place, and folks who use drugs up there are really vulnerable. So yeah, and it's as someone who is giving out works every weekend, it's people don't have enough, and people are still really good about like not sharing, but they're reusing. And so while that may not transmit HIV, using a blunt needle is going to cause like skin and soft tissue infections. And that's already bad enough with the xylazine in the drug supply because it's so like vasoconstricting that people's wounds aren't healing. And you can just walk around Kensington and see so many young people in wheelchairs, missing limbs.
Yep.
And it's I don't know of a place like it in this country, really.
No, and that's what we hear over and over again. So, from your perspective, when you look at, from a clinician kind of standpoint, right? what is the best way to, and maybe you can't answer this, right? Because maybe you're working in a different area and you focus on that area, but just generally speaking, when we're talking about somebody who's maybe been there for a year, maybe longer, is there a good approach to talk to that person and say, listen, we're going to give you what you need, but let's try to work on getting you out of here, doing some other things? Like how does that work? And what do you think is a good approach for something like that?
So I do want to make clear I'm not a clinician.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I work in research.
Mhm.
It is clinical research, but
Mhm.
just want to make sure that distinction is clear. But I honestly I can't pretend I have like the panacea for that. I think
Mhm.
everyone is different. I think uh, mandated treatment's not going to work. I think we know that. Um, I think for me at least, the drug supply has become so toxic that I just want people to stay alive, and maybe they'll decide that treatment is right for them, but they can't even do that if they're dead. And it's just this past Sunday we were out doing outreach, and some of the other folks I was with ended up reversing an overdose. They were driving back to where we keep our supplies, and saw someone slumped over, and gave him rescue breaths and brought him back. And it shouldn't be up to individuals, like just people walking by, to become heroes every day. It you know and like we do that because we care, but it's these people should be taken care of. And we know that like safe injection sites work, and we know that putting people in housing works, and just these very basic thing, like what's the like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like people need their basic needs met, basically. um I can tell you, as someone who's never experienced homelessness, if I were homeless, I don't think that getting off dope would be my primary concern.
Mm.
It's hard enough, and people are really like fighting to survive out there. Um, they're even just like falling asleep at night is dangerous for people. So it's really hard to say. Yeah, but I think one thing we need to keep taking a look at is like expanding MOUD treatment. I think our methadone system is far too restrictive, and um, methadone, I've talked to a lot of people, they say it works better for them than buprenorphine, which does work for a lot of people, but uh, it's still this model of like liquid handcuffs, where people are having to go in every day and get dosed and go to group sessions, and it's hard to hold a job that way and just like live a normal functioning life. And it should be as easy to get as Suboxone is, because it works. I mean, that's one approach that is, I think, concrete. That it's not that it's easy, and the DEA is involved in that. That's not like a Philadelphia decision, but um, I don't know. It's such a complicated problem.
Mhm. So we met at City Council a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago. You were there testifying about legislation that was introduced by Councilmember Ketsu Lozada.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that legislation?
It's vague. That was my initial thought. It's very, very vague. It seems that it's aimed at people distributing harm reduction supplies, clothing, food. Um, my initial question was like, I know that they're not supportive of harm reduction. They don't support what we're doing, but every Sunday there are churches out there giving out food, and are they going to be cited? Or um, and who's, I don't know, the group I give out supplies with, we're not a nonprofit or some like official organization. So are we individually going to have to pay these fines for cleaning up the quote unquote litter? It Yeah, it just it was vague. I had a lot of questions for it, and it just seems uh, like policy put forward in bad faith, when you know there aren't enough trash cans, and there aren't places for people to use the bathroom, and of course there's litter everywhere. You know, um, I can tell you that like if you walk down the street in Kensington on Kensington Ave, where maybe not so much nowadays, but there were many encampments all along the Ave. Every morning on my way to work, you'd see someone with a broom, like at each encampment, basically sweeping up trash, trying to like keep their little section of the sidewalk clear. Sometimes because they wanted to keep a good relationship with that business owner they were camping out in front of. It's a strange dynamic, sure, but it shows that like people, many of them, like they don't want to put people through that. The folks living in the neighborhood. Um, the common thing you hear is kids. Like anytime a parent is walking down the street, someone in the encampment will shout "kids," and everyone stops what they're doing and kind of like hides their paraphernalia and to kind of like try to protect the innocence of these kids because they don't want to be doing that. Public drug use. It's not like it's comfortable,
Mhm.
So and I think it's an extreme example of like kind of the approach a lot of neighborhoods in the city take to litter. Take away trash cans and then wonder why there's litter, and we take away these services and wonder why these things are happening. I remember there was a hepatitis outbreak a few years ago, like there's every few years, and we had those public restrooms installed. I think it was like a pilot in the neighborhood, and I don't remember how long that lasted, but those are the kinds of solutions we need. And I'm sure they're not cheap, but neither is like having to clean up the neighborhood every week. And it's yeah.
How hard is your job?
Um, it can be difficult. I think it doesn't have to be like I think that uh, it's never it's often never like the participants, the people I'm working with who make it hard. It's the limited resources. So at Prevention Point, I was a medical case manager. So I was a case manager for people with HIV who were injecting drugs. So they had a lot of comorbid conditions and had a lot of systems that I would try to help them navigate. Um, and I had about almost 30 people on my caseload. And we were not appointment based, we were drop in based program. So at any moment, 6 of my clients could come in at once. We were all stretched so thin. And it's not the fault of the patients.
Mm.
It's the way these systems are set up.
Yeah.
I used to work in food service for many years, and I think that was almost harder to be yelled at by someone over like a latte than someone who's experiencing homelessness and like they have a reason to be angry with me when they are, and they often weren't. I had a great relationship with a lot of them, but yeah, so it's hard work, but like it's not because of the participants, if that makes sense.
Mhm. So, there are always a lot of misconceptions about what's happening in Kensington, the people who use drugs in general. Where can people go to get accurate information and learn more about what's really happening?
It's a great question. I mean, there are a few folks doing like some decent harm reduction reporting. So not specific to Kensington, but there's a publication called Filter magazine online that does some really good reporting on just drugs in general. There's a great podcast called Crackdown that is based in the downtown east side of Vancouver. That it's excellent, actually. There's there's individual reporters at places like Kensington Voice or even the Inquirer who are doing really good work. I think there are a lot of places to get it. It's just making sure that things are actually based in like fact and science and there's also a lot of, here, there's a lot of good research being done about these populations, and, the relationship between drug users and research hasn't always been great, but I think I see a lot of researchers trying to change that and do good work and do right by people. But yeah, I wish I had like one publication I could send you to that was gonna,
Mhm.
but I think for me, it was just talking to people. And, not everyone can just obviously go up to Kensington and ask people about their lives, but like in the work I was doing, people really opened up to me and challenged a lot of misconceptions I had. So it's also just talking to people, and um, I'm sure anyone in this city has homeless neighbors, um, that maybe you ignore every day on your way to work. And I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. Don't go ask them about their lives right away, but I don't know, just like you would any other neighbor.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. We'd like to thank Emilio Flores for joining us on the program. And Emilio will be back with us in the near future to help us understand what's happening and understand maybe some of the remedies and some of the solutions to this problem. So we're very grateful to Emilio, and we look forward to having him back on the show soon. Now I'd like to bring on Lance Haver. Lance, how are you tonight? Oh, Lance, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, can you,
Yes.
I think that I'm on now?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So that was overwhelmingly difficult to listen to.
Yeah.
So heartbreaking, so horrible. And his acknowledgement that there aren't simple solutions, I thought was very honest, but it makes it harder to figure out what next. And watching your interviews with the Chinatown residents, I also thought was very sad.
Yeah.
And what I'm reporting on this week is that issue. Often the news is bad, maybe horrible. We have a presidential and vice presidential candidate that make up facts that demonize immigrants. Like everybody else who's watching this and everybody else who's participating with us, I'm from a family of immigrants. You're from a family of immigrants. We all are. We all came here. Almost all of us, when we came here, were hated. Our ancestors were turned away at the shores. They were hung. They were killed. Some were brought here enslaved. But no matter how we came here, unless you're a native person, you're an immigrant. So we hear this news, and often I fear we roll our shoulders and kind of say, what can I do? And I am one of the people who unfortunately belongs to a club that nobody wants to join. And that is, I lost an adult son to a violent crime. And many of the people who are in my club recognize we can't go back in time. We don't have a time machine to stop it from happening, the violence, the gun violence. What we do have is the ability to try and make what has happened, the tragedy, more livable. And what I'm reporting on this week, and I'd like to show the video, is a program that my wife and I and other people support to remember our son who passed away, and also to make sure that other people are helped when they find themselves in a tragic situation. So if we could run the video, and then I'll talk about it for a minute afterwards.
Just sitting here in the art studio that I have the pleasure of working in every day. My name is Julie Nolan. I'm an art therapist at Jefferson Moss McGee Rehabilitation Center in Center City, Philadelphia. And as an art therapist working in this setting, every day I work with people who have had some type of traumatic injury or illness that they are at the very beginning stages of recovering from. And I have the opportunity to help them along, helping support them in the process of coping with everything that's happened. A lot of times there's an emphasis at this early stage of the process on what has been lost, and our hope is that through the creative process, through exploring
art maybe for the first time in this person's life, we can
support
their processing of what has happened, but also help them uncover new parts of their identity, uncover new parts of the abilities that they do still have, and give them a new sense of
what life looks
like and what life can look like.
Art has nourished my life since my injury. And after about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, as an inpatient at McGee, Julie Nolan, the art therapist, came into my room, where art therapy is a very important part of healing patients dealing with other serious illnesses and injuries in their lives. So I'm all in on art therapy. I personally support art therapy and my family here at McGee, and encourage others to strongly consider supporting art therapy for the miracle of healing that it brings to everybody. Please join us on September 27th for the next event of Art Heals at Jefferson Moss McGee Rehab Hospital in Philadelphia.
I'm asking you to support Art Heals. Unfortunately, art therapy isn't paid for by most insurance plans. I know firsthand how important it is. My son was badly injured. He was a quadriplegic. He had little hope until he came to Jefferson Moss McGee in Center City for the Art Heals program. It gave him a purpose to life. It gave him a way to get back to living. Please support us. Art Heals, September 27th. It will do more good than what you can imagine. So I want to thank Hall Monitor for letting me run that. Obviously, I think people can tell it's a very emotional issue for me. The theory is that after such a tragic injury, and these are people who have been shot, have lost control of their body. My son learned to paint again with his mouth. The problem, there's really three problems. There's obviously the problem of the injury, which is devastating. The second problem is you have to recreate your life. And for many people, that's hard to imagine. And art therapy helps tap into that creative process where people open up, learn how to be creative, and then take that creativity to learn how to reintegrate, to create their life anew. And the third thing that we don't talk about is how economically devastating it is to have such a tragic injury, to have such a profound disability. We don't support people who are badly injured with a sufficient amount of money. So the event does two things. The event supports the art therapy program because insurance companies the majority of insurance companies refuse to pay for art therapy sessions. So the only way we can do it is by raising money, despite it being proven academically through all the journals that it's successful. And the second thing we do is we raise money so that people who leave the hospital, who have had this opened up for them and want to participate, can leave with money to buy supplies. Because when people go home, there's such little income left and there's so much economic need. Things that we take for granted. You can't get up steps. You can't get into the bathroom. The doors in the house are too small to get the wheelchair through. All of those things require money, and people are stretched. And so we also give awards out so people can go and get the art supplies they need, can continue to create, can continue to tap into the creativity, and can continue to find ways of reliving their lives, of reinvigorating their lives, of recreating themselves. The tragedy has happened. The addiction has happened. The horror has happened. The question for us is, what do we do? Do we just shrug our shoulders and walk away? As we heard, do we walk away from the homeless people? Or do we do what we can to hope and try and create a better world going forward? So thank you for letting me share that. I appreciate the time and the opportunity, And I hope if anyone has any questions, they'll send us an email and I'll get back to them as quickly as I can.
And we're going to have more information in our newsletter that'll go out tomorrow, so people can learn more about what you're working on and how they can help.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you to Vanessa and Denise as well for giving me the time to talk about this.
All right. Thank you, Lance. And now I'd like to bring on Denise Clay-Murray. Denise, how are you tonight?
How are you? Oh, hi. Well, I'm unmuted now.
There you go. So Denise, tell everybody where you were the other day.
Well, on Tuesday, and some of you might remember this from when Larry and I were at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Chicago over the summer. Prior to us doing our workshop on how to create your own hall monitor, Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump stopped by NABJ for what could only be described as an interesting session with journalists that ended up with such things as the ABC News participant Rachel Scott getting death threats afterward, and just all sorts of nonsense. Well, one of the controversies that arose from that was NABJ members were like, okay, well, why wasn't Kamala Harris invited to the convention? As it turned out, she was, and without getting into too much detail, they couldn't make it work for her to come during the convention. So yesterday, she came to WHYY, which just happens to be the place where former NABJ President Sarah Glover is now VP of News, to invite the vice president to speak to NABJ members and the media, in a question and answer session that was similar to the one that the organization had for Trump.
So, key differences between the two. We learned
well, for one thing, there was no talk there were no recipes for cooking dogs and cats discussed. But the subject of what was happening in Springfield did come up. And basically what the vice president said is, if you have a microphone that powerful, you should use it responsibly. And the thing is, anybody who has paid any kind of attention to Donald Trump should know by now that responsible use of the microphone is not his ministry. It just isn't. And she also talked about her economic plan, which, as most of these economic plans do, does not include anything about getting rid of poverty.
Right.
And she also talked about such things as the economy overall, affordable housing, the number of new houses she wants to have built in her first term, which is over 300,000. And that would be good if we could agree on what affordable housing is in this country, which we can. Mm-hmm. And, she talked about it. There was a lot of, as someone who's been covering the campaign, there's a lot of stuff that I heard before, a whole lot of stuff, because it was basic stump speech stuff.
Yeah.
And I understand that to an extent, because she's only been on the campaign trail since real July. So she's playing some catch up with somebody who has basically been on the campaign trail since the moment he was inaugurated in 2017. But, at some point, you have to say something new. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know when we're going to get that something new. But she needs to say something new.
That's what I think as well. It almost sounds like she's not exactly answering the questions when she talks.
Well, I've come to the conclusion that in most news conferences, and as a group of people who, cover Philadelphia politicians all the time, we should know this, getting them to actually answer the question, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like with the whole thing with the Chinatown Stadium and Mayor Parker's announcement, as I often tell our media friends, Larry and I tried to tell you
Almost
last
exactly
year.
a year ago.
Yes, we tried to tell people that this is what you could expect from a press perspective from a Parker administration. So if there are any two people in the entire city of Philadelphia's media ecosystem that are not at all surprised that this is the way she did things, it is you and I. In fact, I spoke to Kathy Hicks, who is the president of the Philadelphia NAACP, and, you know, in the interest of full disclosure, someone that I write for with the Philadelphia Sunday Sun. Now everybody knows that the NAACP is among the people that have endorsed the 76 Place Stadium project. She didn't even know that the mayor was going to do this. And she called the mayor's office and was told that this wasn't going to be a formal announcement about her position, that it was going to be something else. So if you're not even telling the people who support the project, and yet you're doing this with people who are from Chinatown in the room while you're releasing this, it's really not a surprise to anyone. Also, I have a little bit of a scoop on that. According to my sources at City Hall, the timeline that City Council has been given to put something, you know, out for the, you know, whichever committee is handling this, my guess is the committee as a whole, in terms of introducing the legislation, they want it introduced and passed by the end of the year, by the last meeting in December. Now, I don't know how you're going to do that when Mark Squilla has already promised that folks are going to get 30 days to talk about this. And Mayor Parker herself is even saying there's going to be town hall meetings to discuss what's in the, you know, agreement that she's made with the Sixers. I don't know how you do this with, you know, exactly 2 months to do it, plus an election thrown into the middle of all that. But that's what they want. And I think that from here on out, when it comes to coming to City Council, Larry, you and I need to be the first ones there, or we may not have a place to sit.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hot for a while. The timeline doesn't seem to add up to me, but
no, it doesn't. And the thing is, there's a lot about this project that people need to ask really serious questions about. Like, for example, why is it going to take 6 years to build something why is it going to take the Sixers 6 years to build something that most people can put up in a year and a half?
Yeah.
Are they going to be using, you know, people are going to be doing like 1 brick a day? What is that about? Also, they need to ask the one question that whenever it gets asked, nobody has an answer for, which is, you are placing a lot of reliance on SEPTA. And SEPTA is broke. In fact, and I found this out the hard way, on Friday and Saturday nights, it used to be that the last train to Wilmington would leave at 10:30 like it does the rest of the week. It now leaves at 9:05. And it now leaves at 9:05 to go to Wilmington, which means they are starting to shrink service at least on the weekends on the regional rail. And since many basketball games take place on weekends, and also since if you're doing like a national game, like a TNT game or NBC when it gets started, most of those games are in prime time, which means that's 8:00 at night.
Yeah.
And there's no way that it's going to be done in enough time for you to rush to the train station, especially if it goes into overtime. Now, the way where they want to build it, they say, oh, it's on top of Jefferson Station, which I guess makes them think that people can run right down. But there are certain parts of Jefferson Station that are closed off. after a certain time.
Yeah.
Because, there's still going to be some of the fashion district left, and there's going to be parts of it that are closed off. So, the reliance on SEPTA is something that people really need to drill down on, because the state has made it abundantly clear that they're not going to do for Philadelphia what Illinois has done for Chicago and Wrigleyville, namely have a dedicated funding stream that goes directly to the CTA. They've already let you know they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So how are you going to pull this off?
Well, transit-wise, they're not going to make any improvements to Jefferson Station. SEPTA can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to have any increased service that we could tell right now. People from the suburbs are terrified to ride SEPTA into the city. That's not going to happen. So I don't understand how any of this adds up from the public transportation end of it. You're going to have more people driving,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to congest the area. There's a hospital right there. What's that going to do to the hospital? No one's answered those questions yet for me.
Well, what's going to end, and see, what they need to understand is the first person that ends up dying from a heart attack because they can't get to the hospital on time or right away to get the help they need, that's going to lead to a really nasty lawsuit. And it's not just going to be aimed at the Sixers. It's also going to be aimed at the city, because, the mayor has pretty much put her stamp on this.
Yep.
And, it was something that was interesting in the video that you shot, Larry, where the woman was saying, we not only can vote politicians in, we can vote them out. I would like to be an optimist and think that that is exactly what's going to happen for some people that are involved here. But I've been covering politics in Philadelphia far too long to be an optimist about that.
Right.
Because if that were the case, there's a whole lot of people that should have been voted out a long time ago.
Sure. Yeah.
And, that doesn't happen. But people need to hold folks' feet to the fire on this. Because if they don't, they'll think that it's okay. I'm still personally thinking, why not, go with what Comcast is trying to do in South Philly and create its own version of Wrigleyville? Why not do that? Because people would like that. And plus, what you could do is have some sort of regional rail thing that connects, like, from the airport to South Philly.
Yeah,
that might be an easier thing to do from a transit perspective, or even from a people wanting it their perspective. Now, granted, that section of South Philly has been through a lot because of the stadiums, but they already have the infrastructure to
and the space
and the space to support it.
Mm-hmm. It would work out just fine if they wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. But that's where we are with it. So we're gonna stay on top of that, Denise. There's a lot more to come in this story. It's not over yet.
No.
And I have a feeling it won't be over for a long time. Even if this legislation does get through council, that may not exactly be the end of it. So we'll be following that, and we'll be back next week on Hall Monitor.